Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go.
Welcome to episode 5. Episode 5 of the Friday Fireside Chats with your hosts, Karen Baxter.
And I'm Ed Michel.
Okay, so this week we are talking about resource guarding. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, resource guarding. Yeah, so that's one of those phrases that often people will hear it, but they don't really know what it means when they hear the phrase. However, a lot of people have experienced this with their dogs. They just don't know what it's called.
Yeah. And I think it's like it's a common theme you're going to probably notice here in the show is a lot of these terms have become catch-all terms, right? They're ways to summarize a behavior that probably actually encompasses a lot of different individual behaviors.
Yes.
And then you put a general label on it.
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
That label is easily misunderstood.
Or the label gets used in such a way that it narrows what the causes are and how to treat them. So people think there's only one way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And if there's only one way to deal with something and your dog doesn't fit into that mold, it can actually skew your approach. So I think, what you do going forward. Right.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
I think that the first thing we'll start with then is, what is resource guarding actually?
Okay. Do you want me to define it?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say resource guarding basically is any behavior a dog displays in order to try and keep something to themselves.
Yeah.
And that resource can be something like food. It can be a toy. It can be a person. It could be a space. Anything that the dog essentially feels is valuable to them that they don't want to lose.
Yeah, exactly. Resources, right? So you're right. Food, toys, space, people. It can be anything that the dog likes, wants to keep for themselves. And I think the added piece to that is, from the guarding perspective, is they really are protecting it. They really want to make sure there's no threat to it, that nobody's going to take it.
Yeah.
Right.
I say like any behavior they do to accomplish that, because I'm sure we'll probably get into myths at some point here.
Yeah.
But I think oftentimes people think it's not an issue until you're seeing that outright aggressive displays.
Right. And then that's the only dog that gets
air
labeled.
snapping at me. He has resource guarding. And it's like, you know what? There's a lot of subtle indications that a dog is feeling the need to guard something that you might not identify as being concerning at this point.
That's right.
But something like the freeze and stare.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? That subtle type of indication of, I don't feel comfortable right now with you being around something that I have.
That's right.
That is resource guarding.
Yeah.
It just might not be to a severity that causes action on the pet parent side yet.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I think another important thing when we're talking about resource guarding is for everybody to understand that resource guarding in and itself is not who the dog is. So it's not, I've got a bad dog because I've got a resource guarder. I think what people need to understand is resource guarding is a behavior pattern that is instinctual in all living creatures. Yeah. All living creatures, that the resources that they have, they need for survival, so they need to protect them. Yeah. Now, some will have more trust and therefore don't feel the need to resource guard. And some dogs are going to feel like they do need to resource guard. Yeah. A really good human analogy, I always tell my clients when we're talking about resource guarding and how to explain it, if I'm eating a burger and you try to take it from me, I'm going to tell you to get lost. Yeah. And that's resource guarding. Yeah. Right?
And I think that also hits the nail on the head where we say, like, it's not necessarily a quote unquote bad behavior.
It's just a natural
I don't
behavior.
think anyone would shame anybody because I put a password on my email.
Right?
Or I have a lock on my car door because I don't want people going through and taking my stuff. It's like, there is a lot of really natural tendencies that every creature is going to do to protect the things they have.
100%.
I think the issue arises when the behaviors that you're choosing to do that start to impede on the safety or freedom or agency of another creature.
Exactly. So I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to share a personal story. So I want people to understand that resource guarding, where it becomes complicated or problematic in the household with your dog, it can happen to anybody. Like you don't have to. Because I'm a dog trainer. People might think this might not have happened to me ever, but I totally get what people go through, because I had said this in my opening video for the week. I had this wonderful dog. You guys will hear me talk about her a lot through the coming weeks, but I had this wonderful golden retriever puppy, and she was my first golden retriever. And I thought, happy-go-lucky, really easygoing. They're a great family dog. I don't have to worry about things like resource guarding. And at 4 months of age, she growled at me and showed her teeth as I walked by her when she had a piece of cardboard. And let me tell you, I was devastated. My dog hates me, right? Oh my gosh, she's aggressive. Holy schmoly. So now this was 18, 19 years ago. So it was a long time ago. I've learned so much more since then. And I really was concerned about that behavior. And so at that stage, I did all the things that the average pet parent does with a brand new puppy in the beginning until the resource guarding happened. Then, because I already had an affinity for working with dogs, and I was a hobbyist at that stage. I wasn't a professional dog trainer. I'd already done a significant amount of studying and learning. I decided I had to do something about it, where I just instinctually knew that dog was trying to control what happened to that cardboard, and that she just, for some reason, felt I was a threat to it. And I wanted to change her perspective on me approaching the cardboard. Now I'm going to tell you really quickly that it took me a very short period of time, because I changed the environment and I changed what I did significantly with her. And within a few weeks, that dog never resource guarded from me again in her whole life. I didn't correct it. I didn't do anything to stop her. I just worked on trust. And that dog trusts me 100%. I didn't have to worry about it anymore. However, not every dog is like that. So I want to say that up front. Some dogs are harder than that. She was fairly simple to get out of it, but it was very extreme when she did it. It was a very strong emotional outburst from the dog when she first resource guarded, and it can be terrifying. Absolutely.
I think that's why this is such a big issue for a lot of people, especially like for yourself, but if you have kids in the environment, if there's other dogs, like this could be dog-to-dog resource guarding, where you start to see, ooh, if they would have acted upon this, that could have been really bad.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Right? Yeah.
It's dangerous. So this is why we want to talk about it, because if you have a dog that's showing any signs of resource guarding and you're not paying attention to it, and you misunderstand the communication from the dog and it starts to escalate, it can become a dog bite eventually. And which is then never good for the dog when that happens, nor the people. So we want to make sure that people understand it and really look at the dog that they've got and see, are there things that are happening that maybe the dog doesn't trust you 100%, and we need to change the way we're doing things a little bit so that the dog no longer has any concerns about how much control they have over their resources, or whether or not there's trust in the environment. We want to make sure they feel completely safe, and that their perception is, when I have something, I am safe and I don't have to worry about it.
And like you said, I think some dogs that's going to be easier for.
Absolutely.
Like I've seen, some resource guarding be resolved literally in a week. Right? It goes away. With other dogs, it can take much longer than that. And I think that's also where you start dealing with, what were the root causes of this? Where did this get created? Is this something you inherited because maybe you adopted this dog later on and you don't really know the history that has contributed to this behavior?
And there could be genetic components. Like
of course.
Some dogs are going to more intensely resource guard than others because of their genetics, their learning history, their environment. All those things have a role in how much a dog resource guards.
Well, I think a good example of that, just to give people an understanding, when you say genetics, this might be something like a herding breed dog. Herding dogs, they are meant to kind of protect that flock in a sense. Well, that flock becomes viewed as a resource. So by protecting that resource, you are resource guarding. So it can be a natural, innate behavior that is a genetic tendency of a dog, like a German Shepherd, for instance, where that might be something that is naturally expressed. And again, it's not bad that that's there. And if used correctly, it can be a very valuable thing that the dog has this tendency.
That's right.
We just have to make sure that we are doing everything on our part that they don't view us or other people as the threat to those resources.
Exactly.
Right?
Why don't we take this time now to go through some of the early warning signs, and we can like escalate them ourselves as we're talking about them. So
Sure, yeah.
how about some things that people might miss too in there when they see a dog? I've got some really subtle ones that dogs can do.
Sure, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so first one is if you put your dog's food down and then you're walking towards them and they turn themselves to put their back is to you,
Yep.
and their body is blocking you from their
like
food
body
bowl.
blocking, yeah.
Right? So they turn, they're eating, and then they turn and they go between you and the food bowl. So they're not growling, they're not doing anything. They just move their bodies in between you and the bowl. That's a form of resource guarding. It's mild.
I've seen another one that's mild where, this can be misinterpreted because sometimes dogs do this just when they're excited.
Yeah.
But you see that dog who kind of leans forward to grab something out of your hand. Maybe you have a chew. They take it and then they run away to a spot to eat it.
Run away to a spot.
Now, they could be taking it because they want to run around in the backyard with it and throw it around.
Yeah,
or they could be running up to the bedroom and eating it without anybody around.
Yeah.
Right?
Or people who think they put the dog's food down and the dog eats really fast.
Yeah.
Right? And especially if it speeds up as you approach. So if you put the bowl down and they start eating and you take a step towards them and they start eating quicker, that's resource guarding.
Yeah.
Very dangerous for dogs who eat things. So if you have a dog that eats things and they see you coming, they'll swallow it.
Yeah.
Right? That's when you get obstruction surgeries
yeah,
and things like that because the dog doesn't want you to take the thing, so they'll swallow it.
And I have a good flip side of that one because
Yeah.
you're saying, well, they eat really quickly, but it can also be that dog that while they're eating, you come in and they completely stop.
Yes.
And they kind of hard stare and they follow you with their
hard
eyes,
stare,
but
yes.
the head stays in one direction.
Yes.
It's like, what are you doing here? Are you coming
Yes,
towards me?
that's right.
Why are you here?
Yep, exactly. Now, when they start to escalate, it's things like the freeze and the head goes down and they stare.
Yep.
And they have the little whites of their eyes are showing, or whale eye as they call it.
Yep.
Right? So, all of a sudden they're eating, nom, 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 and then you're walking towards them and they...
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Another one, like the lip curl, like
Lip
showing,
curl, yeah.
showing their teeth a little bit at you. Yeah, the low growl like you just did there. Thank you, Karen. But those are all, now we are escalating. Like if you want to say it's on a ladder, like
Yes.
we're moving up that ladder
That's
to
right.
more,
Yeah.
blatant kind of displays of
Yes.
willingness to be aggressive.
That's right. Another one that's very subtle is if they have a toy, and I've seen this before, they go to a spot like you were saying, and the toy is between their paws, and they put their paws, so they sort of have their paws around the item, right? That is a resource guarding position. So as from a bite prevention perspective, right, if I see a dog that's like that and has the toy there, I never reach in and take that toy.
No.
Never.
Yeah.
Never, because I'm setting that dog up to have to then push me away somehow, whether that's they growl at me or they snap at me, so.
Well, I think that would be the next escalation is like the snapping.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to make sure that people understand this too. Like snapping is still a sign of communication.
Oh, 100%.
'Cause I've had clients before where they go like, oh, they missed me.
Yeah.
They didn't miss. Right?
Yeah.
If they wanted to bite you, you were bitten there.
Yes.
The snapping is a very purposeful display of, I could have bit you
Yes.
if I wanted to.
But I didn't really want to.
didn't
I
want
just
to,
wanted you to stop doing
right?
whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's still communication. It's still
It
saying
is still
you
communication.
are stressing me out
That's
more
right.
and more and
Exactly.
more. But that might be one of the last ones before we start getting to actual teeth on skin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So now if we see a dog doing that, what are the things that we shouldn't do? So like I told you about the dog who's got the toy between here, I won't reach in and grab it.
Yeah.
Right? That's one thing I won't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that you won't do if you see a dog resource guarding?
Well, I don't know how broad you want to get to this, but I'm not a big fan of the idea of just offering an exchange.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Me
So,
either. Yeah.
they're guarding food. I'm going to take out really more yummy food and try and give that.
Right.
And I think a lot of times with some of these strategies, like there's short-term versus long-term
Yes.
that we were kind of discussing. Is like some of these things might work 1 or 2 or 3 times when you try
Yeah.
them.
Like as an emergency.
As an emergency,
Yeah.
right? So if we completely caught off guard and we had never dealt with this before, maybe we missed those early signs of displaying, and then now all of a sudden my dog did growl at me and, oh shoot, my kid's still on the floor and what am I gonna do here?
Yeah.
Well then yes, in that moment, maybe
Yeah.
going and grabbing couple pieces of hot dog and tossing them in the other direction,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a really good management strategy for that instance
Yeah.
of getting the dog hopefully to release.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not a strategy I'm gonna be using repeatedly. Because I don't think, and maybe we'll delve a little bit deeper into it.
We will, for sure.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
going to fix it in that term.
Yeah.
Right.
How about things like, I'm thinking more from punitive methods, like I won't punish a dog for resource growling from humans in particular. There's a difference between punishment where you're interrupting a behavior in the moment, as long as you have trust. So I'll give you an example. I have dogs in my house. Of course, I have several. So I have a couple of them that resource guard from the other dogs.
Yep.
Right. So they will growl, they'll posture, they'll do things like that if they're guarding a resource. So if I didn't set up the environment correctly so that that doesn't happen, I might have to interrupt their growling in the moment so that I can redirect them somewhere to another location or something like that, just so that things don't escalate. But it's not my whole strategy, and it's only in that moment when I didn't set them up for success in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm just interrupting that growling just to move them along.
Yeah.
But I don't want to like, hey, don't growl at me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, like
Understood.
dog growls at you. I'm not going to pin them. I'm not going to growl at them. I'm not going to, grab their scruff. I'm not going to do any of those things, because in that moment, the dog already thinks I'm a threat to their resources. And all I'm doing is reaffirming to the dog, I'm a threat to their resources.
Plus, I mean, you're
So,
opening the door to that type of aggression.
100%.
I mean, there might be a large majority of dogs out there where you do that, they back down. And
Yes.
again, in the short term, maybe you think, oh, well, that worked.
Yes.
But you might also get those dogs who were waiting for that challenge.
Right.
You step in and say, well, hey, no, don't do that. And maybe you scruff
That's right.
them. Well, then
Yeah.
now they put teeth on you.
That's right.
Right. And I think I'm also very resistant to using methods that I wouldn't want my whole family using.
Agreed.
Right.
Yes.
So maybe,
it has to be something
maybe
everybody
I
can
personally,
do. Yeah.
because my size or my relationship with the dog or whatever it is, I go, well, I think I can get away with this here.
Yeah.
If it's not something that I'm looking at my wife and saying,
Yeah.
hey, you can do this too. Right. If my wife was in the moment, I'd say, well, no, don't put your hands on the dog. Well, then that's
right.
not a strategy to deal with this.
And all we're succeeding in doing in those moments is reaffirming to the dog people can't be trusted
Yeah.
near their stuff, right? So resource guarding with people, I'm very conscious of, I don't want to increase conflict. I don't want to break trust more than it's already broken, right? Because there's obviously an issue with trust if the dog is resource guarding from humans.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make that worse. So I don't want to do that. I don't want them to escalate, like you said, and I don't want it to ever become a dog bite situation.
But I think it's good to make the clarification though with the people watching at home is we're not saying then allow your dog to behave unsafely and permit that behavior to
Correct.
happen, right? Like
correct.
if it was, say, my daughter went over when my dog is eating and she is starting to grab the food bowl and I see him bare his teeth, and I'm not going to allow him to bite her there because I'm trying to do
That's
better
right.
strategies.
Yeah.
But what I might do is place a barrier in between
Yeah,
the two of them. right?
exactly.
Maybe Maybe I'll put a chair down in between, and then I'll
Yeah.
separate the situation. So
Yeah,
in the
environmental,
moment, I
yeah.
might use some environmental tools to
Yeah.
kind of separate that to correct the dog, quote unquote, because
Exactly.
I'm not going to allow him to behave in a certain way.
No. No. And
but-
of course, going forward, you're going to manage that better.
Well, yeah,
Because you're
and
going to
I
make
think
sure that
anytime
the child
you're-
can't go near the dog while it's eating.
Yeah.
Right? So that the dog is not seeing the child as a threat to their resources, which happens quite a bit. And like we've seen that a lot
Yeah.
where they're children, so they're unpredictable. Right?
Yeah.
And parents need to be aware that a dog is a dog. They're not doing it to be mean. They're doing it to protect their resources. So if it's food, it's food. So in that moment, when the dog is protecting its food, I'm not letting the children go around the dog
Yeah.
and bother the dog.
Yeah.
So if that means I put the dog away in another room while they eat, or I feed the dog when the kids have gone to bed, any of those kind of strategies where the dog is now safe to eat their food, they have control of their environment, they don't feel like their food's at risk, that's what I'm going to do. And if children are causing them to feel unsafe, I'm definitely going to make sure that the children are not around the dog when they're eating.
Yeah.
And I really want to educate children not to bother the dog when they're eating, or not to grab toys out of their mouth, or jump in their space when they're sleeping. Because don't forget, resource guarding can be any resource. Any resource.
Yeah.
Food, toys, space, people.
Well, I think that's always my very
resource.
first recommendation whenever we're dealing with this is before we start getting into, training tactics or trust building stuff or anything we have to do about relationship or anything like that. The very first thing I'm going to implement is some safety precautions and some management
Safety first,
to
always.
prevent as best to our capabilities of that behavior from being rehearsed.
That's right.
Right. So if this is happening right here and over here is where we have a fixed relationship and a handle on the behavior, there is this in between gap. Well, the thing that I can do right away is install some of those safety and management strategies that you're talking about. And yeah, like you said, if I'm feeding my dog, my kids aren't going to be anywhere around them at the same time.
Right.
I'm going to try to
Exactly.
the best of my ability to indicate and identify the triggers of this resource guarding. So if I'm noticing it's always happening around shoes, I'm going to put those shoes in a closet.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
If it's because every time you grab the leash, he starts to go crazy, well, I'm going to make sure I'm hanging that leash on a hook or a place where the dog can't see it. Right? But yes, that management might, depending if this is just a budding, emerging behavior, that management simply by itself might fix it.
It might.
But
Yeah.
it also is indicative to me that if I'm having to manage the household in this way, there's some other indicator that is probably happening. Something like you're talking about where the dog now feels like he can't trust, or he feels pressure on, or he feels like resources are limited, or that they are in competition with that kid, or whatever it is. And then we have to really be honest of looking at the relationship to say, okay, what is happening here? And to me, that is what's going to inform your long-term solutions on top of the management.
Exactly. Exactly. So why don't we get into that a little bit? Why don't we talk about the different types of resource guarding and some of just a few hints. We can't go into any really deep details. So if anybody out there has a dog that's resource guarding and it's problematic in your household, you really need to reach out to a professional dog trainer or behavior consultant or veterinary behaviorist who has experience with resource guarding, so that you can put some strategies in place to help change that dog's emotional state so they no longer feel the need to resource guard and to keep you and your family safe. So
and make sure you're going to somebody who has experience dealing with resource guarding.
Yes.
Right? Because it is a complex issue.
Very.
No, there are some dog trainers out there that are very, very good dog trainers, but maybe don't delve into the behavior side of training.
That's right.
And they might think, oh, well, this is just, that's just exchange. Right? As for instance, and that might be one that we talk about, where we talked about in another episode where positive reinforcement, as that is one of our main approaches, can be misused if used incorrectly. There are a lot of times where you can, unbeknownst to yourself, be reinforcing the resource guarding. Right?
Absolutely.
And something like continually introducing higher and higher value food in the presence of a dog that is guarding resources can be a recipe for disaster if you are using it improperly.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So you want to be very careful of the advice you listen to.
100%.
But go on.
So let's just do general high level overview. So if I got a dog who's guarding food. So first thing I do, of course, I use management strategies. So I want to manage the environment. So if I have a dog that really guards its food bowl, then I want to look at what is it guarding from me? Is it guarding from the other dogs? What's the guarding? What is the pressure that is being put on the dog where the dog feels like they need to control the environment to protect their resources? So I'll give you another little personal story. So as you know, I have multiple dogs. So I have this one dog. I love him. He's great. He's a border collie. His name is Rapid. And Rapid is a resource guarder, not from me, but from the other dogs. So for a long time, when I would feed them, I have a feeding station, I would get all their food bowls ready and I'd start getting their food ready. And Rapid's in the line of feeding, he was in the middle of the pack. I was putting his bowl down like third or fourth in the pack. And he would growl at every dog and hover around the feeding station and growl. So I started doing the training things as a trainer, right? I taught him to go on to his place and I wanted him to stay there while I was getting the food ready. It did not fix the problem at all. I spent a lot of time just trying to control the dog, right? And that really was not a solution. So I really had to take a step back and think about, okay, what can I do to change the way that Rapid feels about the food so that he no longer felt the need to growl at all the other dogs in the moment while I'm getting all their food ready. I changed one little thing for this guy. I changed the order in which he was fed. So actually I changed two things because he was being fed sort of middle of the space as well. So
say location
I put him in the
probably
the furthest away, but I fed him first. So that's all I did. Almost immediately, he stopped growling at all the other dogs. As soon as he knew he was getting fed first, the conflict was gone, because that was the conflict. The conflict was the other dogs are getting food and he wasn't, and he wanted his food. So by taking his food, moving him over to the further location, so I switched him with another dog, right, and putting him there. Within 2 days, he was running to that spot, standing there, waiting for his food to come, because he knew he was getting fed first.
So just by changing some of the environmental pressures.
I changed some of the environmental pressure. And he's still a resource guarder. And if the environment is set up in such a way where he feels like he has to protect his resources, he'll still guard from the other dogs.
I think honestly that's a good example of like those management environmental things that we were talking about, where sometimes in and of itself, they will prevent the behavior from rehearsing. Did it necessarily stop him from being a resource guarder? Maybe not.
No, he still has a lot of pressure. He's in a house with lots of dogs.
It creates an environment where he doesn't have an opportunity to rehearse it.
That's right.
And the consequence of him having this behavior is very much stripped away.
But it highlighted for me that one of the ways that resource guarding, we can help a dog feel more safe and have more control, is having that predictable routine that works for him. So this routine works for him. And by doing that, resource guarding at dinner time is gone. He no longer growls. I'm still getting all 6 bowls ready at the same time. He's still around. I'm no longer telling him to go to his place. He gets to hang around while I'm getting it ready. Doesn't growl at anybody because he knows he's getting his first. Yeah. Right. So it just magically went away simply because I paid attention and thought, okay, what is going on with this dog? Why is he doing this? It's like, oh, he just needs to feel like he has some control over what's going on, and that he is no longer being threatened by the other dogs. There's no risk to his food by the other dogs. So that's another one. So predictability, making sure I have a good pattern, making sure that I've managed everything so that the dog is not practicing the behavior, because we can't change the way they feel if they're continually practicing it, right? And reducing the pressure. Yeah, that's really key for me with the food.
Well, like you said too, there's some realities with your environment where you can't remove all that entirely. The pressure is also the fact that there's 6 other dogs there about to be fed. Yeah. Right. So I mean, we could say, well, get rid of the 6 dogs and it goes away, but that's not a reality.
That's not a reality. Right? So, but just changing the routine and putting it in so that it was predictable, safe for him. He knew where he had to go, and he knew that he was getting fed right away, so nobody was going to take his food. Those things worked for that dog. Now, not that one solution is not going to be the same for everybody. That was for that one dog. Yeah. It just highlighted for me that it wasn't as simple as training it out of him. Yeah. So you can't train it out of him. It is a natural instinct for a dog.
And like you said, depending on other people's situations, like if their variables are different, that might not necessarily be the solution for them. No. If you have more than one dog that is resource guarding, if he ate his food really quickly and then started going to the other food bowls, right? There are there's still ways that it could have been
there's still things
repeated.
I had to put in place. There's still management. Now, fortunately, I've trained my dogs that they are not to go to the other dogs' bowls, so they all know they're supposed to stay at their bowl and they're supposed to eat. So I don't have any issues with that. Good. However, if I did have that kind of an issue, I would separate them. So I would put them in other rooms. I would use doors and baby gates. I would do things like that to make sure that there was no pressure on any of the dogs. Well, they should be able to eat in peace. Yeah. That's the key. They should be able to eat in peace. Now, if it's people, I haven't had that one myself, but I have worked with dogs that resource guard from people. Yep. I changed the way people approach the dog. So I do implement some of the desensitization techniques where I'm trying to change the association of people being around them by people going by and dropping things on the floor that are good for the dog. And I always tell people not to look at the dog and don't put any extra pressure on the dog and don't walk too close. Mm-hmm. You always have to worry about safety and management first. So if it's a dog who's a very aggressive resource guarder, you have to make sure that the people are not at risk at all times.
Well, that's where barriers come in, gates and X-pens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But I really don't want to push the dog to that point.
I was going to say, it's protect the people, but it's also to take the pressure off of the dog. Right?
Definitely. And this is why I say get a professional, because it can escalate into something that can result in a dog bite if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. So have a professional guide you through these things. Don't do them on your own because they can be dangerous, and you want to be very sure that you're doing okay. But the point is, I will do some positive association. I will do some desensitization. I will do some of that stuff to help a dog feel better. But the number one thing for me, again, is the management of the environment. Yeah. I'm going to put that dog into another room by themselves with no pressure from me. They can just go ahead and eat. There's no issues. I have another resource guarder at my house who will resource guard from people. So yeah, so I do have that. I just forgot about it because she doesn't do it with me anymore. Right? So, and she's a rescue. And so when I got her, she resource guarded from people when she has high value items. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't do that with me anymore because she's learned I'm not going to bother her when she eats, and she does have a safe space to go. So when she's eating, she goes into another room where she gets to eat. Nobody goes in that room while she's eating. Yeah. And then when she comes out, it's fair game. So it's all good. But in the beginning, she definitely resource guarded with food because she felt unsafe. Yeah. And so once she felt secure and safe and no longer felt like there was any risk, then she's okay. She's spicy, so she would still have the propensity to do it if it was strange people. But with us,
well, I think with a rescue too, you're also then, like I referenced earlier, is you now have a history that has contributed to that we don't necessarily know.
That's correct.
And there could be confirmation many times over for that dog that people are not to be trusted.
That's right.
Right. I think when you were talking about the desensitization, it's a good distinction to make between dropping food down and then expecting something in return for that.
Exactly. Right? I don't expect anything.
I think that's where I was saying I'm not a big fan of that, the trade up solution.
Exactly.
Because though it might work the first couple times, dogs are incredibly smart, and they also understand the consequence of behaving certain ways. Yeah. So if every single time you offer me something, but it does result in me losing out on the thing I originally had, they can get very wise to that.
Oh,
And very often that food itself can start to become aversive because I know that the presence of that food is only because you want something from me.
That's right.
It's something I don't want to give up.
That's right.
And sometimes with clients, I'll talk about, you can objectively like two things, even equally as well. So I absolutely love pizza and I absolutely love chocolate cake. And there could be times where if I have pizza and you want me to put it down, maybe you offer me chocolate cake. That could work.
Right.
But if every time I take the cake, I lose out on the pizza, I could get wise to that. And if I don't want to lose out on the pizza, I'm going to start refusing the chocolate cake.
Yep.
Or there could be times where, I just want to keep the pizza. I don't want chocolate cake right now.
That's right.
And if you're ultimately phrasing it or positioning it as a choice, well, my choice could be to continue protecting the thing I have.
Yeah, right? And we've seen dogs eating kibble that's not theirs or they're not supposed to be eating it, and somebody tries to use meat to get them away. Well, meat's way better than kibble.
Yep.
But that dog will not relinquish the kibble because they know you're going to take them away from it.
And it's also the pressure you're placing on them. I think we've all seen it as well, where that exchange becomes very, I'm in your face. Take this. Come on, give me that. Here, you want this instead. And it becomes very confrontational.
Yes.
Where now you are causing that dog's emotional level to spike to the point where they could be, they're definitely over threshold. Mm-hmm. And now they're not necessarily rationally thinking at all in that moment. That kind of instinctual behavior takes over. And so if that is the way that we're dealing with things, again, it could work the first few times you do it. Yeah. But you are very, very close to kind of dipping over a line where that can become troublesome.
Exactly. Right? Now, would you do anything different if it was spatial guarding or guarding of people?
Well, I think, again, it's going to be repetitive here. A management is something that is very, very key here. So the most common spatial guarding is going to be like a comfy space, right? This is what I see more often than not, is they are guarding the couch or they're guarding the bed. Yeah. And clients all the time will ask me, is it bad to let my dog up in my bed, or is it bad to let my dog up onto the couch? And my answer, unfortunately, is not necessarily. It depends on the dog.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? If we're starting to see that there is a value that is being created there, that the dog is not willingly giving up when it presents itself. Let's say you have another family member that walks in and we say, okay, down, and there is a resistance to get down there. Well, then I would say that getting up onto that space in the first place could be problematic if that is the behavior we're seeing, and now we have to kind of nip this in the bud.
Unfortunately, right? I mean, really the underlying theme for where the resource guarding can start is the humans trying to control everything.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a dog that has shown any signs of resource guarding, I'm probably not going to let them on the furniture simply because I don't want to be put in a situation, and I don't want the dog to be put in a situation where now it's comfortable. I like it here. I don't want to get taken off, and people approaching me equals you're going to make me move. Right? So the dog then has no choice but to resource guard, because how are they going to make the people stop?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the couch, because I've also seen dogs protecting their dog bed.
I've seen dogs protect their dog beds
too. So you say, well, let's get that dog off of the couch. Let's maybe offer a dog bed in the environment, and then that behavior will go away.
Yeah.
No, oftentimes, that is going to transfer then to that space. Right?
Yeah, it really is a trust issue.
Yeah.
So we have to go back and look at, why is the dog doing it? Try and determine what is the reason for the guarding. Is there something we're doing? Is it an environmental situation? Is it genetics? Is it their learning history? If it is, then we need to deal with the root cause.
Yeah.
If the dog is just trying to protect itself and protect its resource, and disturbances in the environment that make the dog feel like that's threatened is going to cause them to guard, even if it's their own dog bed. I've seen things like the dog is sleeping and people want to kiss it goodnight. So while the dog is sleeping in his dog bed, they go over and they want to kiss the dog goodnight, and the dog then eventually objects because their sleep's being disturbed by the human going over to their dog bed and waking them up.
Well, I've seen kids going up and wanting to give them hugs when they're sleeping. Oh, they look so cute, and they want to go over.
Or lie in the dog bed with the dog.
Yeah, cuddle.
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
again, it all comes down to, we are now putting pressure onto that dog. We're taking away the security of the dog in that moment.
Yes.
And some opinions might be, well, the dog should be okay with that.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I can maybe understand what you're saying there. However, nobody is going to be okay with existing in a world where you have no security, you have no agency, you have no comfortability.
That's right.
There's no predictability.
Yeah.
I mean, that creates these behaviors. And ultimately, if you want a dog that is just willing to allow anything happen to them, you're going to be battening up against this in a lot of different areas, and you're going to see this emerging in a lot of different avenues, right?
If you want a stuffed dog, then you will have none of those issues. That's a good segue though into talking about some of the myths that we commonly hear out there about how to either prevent resource guarding or how to deal with resource guarding. And this is what prompted me to want to talk about resource guarding, because we hear it all the time when we do our puppy classes, some of the things that people read or watch or hear online about what to do when they have a puppy, and how to make sure the puppy's going to be okay when people go around their food or go around their stuff. So the number one that bugs me the most is sticking your hand in your dog's food bowl.
Yeah.
Right? The thing is, I put my hand in their food while they're eating, and to make sure they're okay with me putting my hand in there. That to me is a biggie. And it kind of goes along with, I want the dog to know that everything is mine, and so I'm controlling it all, and they only get it at my leisure, basically.
Well, and it also, again, speaks to that they have no control over their resources.
That's right.
And, I've worked in the shelter setting a whole lot, and we get a lot of resource guarders that would come into those environments. They've lost out on a lot of resources. Maybe they've come from really resource-limited environments.
And they're probably quite anxious and stressed as well. Yeah.
And a lot of times, it would actually surprise you that around feeding, we tend not to see the replication of these behaviors, because our feeding behavior or our feeding ritual is incredibly structured, that is essentially based on the idea of give the dog the food, close the kennel door, and walk away. Let that dog eat in peace.
Let them eat.
And you see this tendency of resource guarding completely diminish entirely, because there's no threat in that environment. And you would say, well, we haven't really done anything to work on the resource guarding specifically, but you'll be surprised that we don't see it at all as being replicated, because they don't feel there's a need to, right? And then you put that dog into a home where maybe they have the person who's adopted them has some misfound guidance, and they say, well, I really want to make sure the dog understands the rules of my house. This is and all of a sudden they start doing those tactics where I'm going to take the food bowl away in between eating 3 or 4 times. I'm going to take it away and then put it back, or I'm going to reach my hand in the food bowl, and these behaviors will reemerge. And so, well, what's the big common denominator there? Ultimately, it's the pressure on the dog during that eating environment.
That's right. And I think people often, so we could do a whole show just on shelter dog behavior and
of
when you
course,
get a dog from a shelter, what should you do or what shouldn't you do? I think what happens too with a lot of dogs that come from a shelter is people immerse them into their daily life too quickly and thinking the dog will just automatically adapt. And in all fairness to that dog, they've just had a tremendous amount of upheaval in their life, and they've come from a shelter that's extremely stressful, and now they're in a brand new space with brand new people, and they don't have a clue who these people are, whether they're safe or not, and they have no control over what's going on.
And their stress levels can remain high for days and days after leaving that
yes,
shelter.
exactly.
I mean, very often we'd see a lot of like returns that would happen would be within the first day or two.
Right.
And most of the time it's like they're trying to do too much with the dog,
Too much,
quickly,
too fast.
too high of an expectation for a dog that you just brought home that you don't know.
That's right.
But I think it speaks to that idea of, we need to build trust. We need to build a relationship.
Yes.
We need to allow them to understand there's some predictability and some agency here.
Exactly.
And not saying that you're in control, but you have control over certain aspects here.
That's
and
right.
that, like when you're feeding, you can eat. There's no pressure on you here.
There's no pressure. Yeah, you're good. You're safe. You can eat, and no one's going to take your food.
Yeah.
Another one for me is that guarding has to do with dominance, that the dog is dominant. And we need to show the dog that we're the ones who are in charge, and we're the top dog. We're the alpha dog, right? And that to me it's a huge myth about resource guarding. It has nothing to do with dominance.
No.
Nothing.
I think if you were listening to this talk at all up until this point, I mean, I think hopefully we've clearly demonstrated like resource guarding is a non-species specific, all-encompassing behavior that almost every being has. Again, would you say that I am being dominant because I lock my car? Or you are being dominant because you don't want me to take a bite of your cheeseburger when you're eating a cheeseburger.
Exactly.
Right. I think those types of viewpoints miss the mark on what is the motivating factors behind the dog behaving this way.
Right.
Right. And you start to put these things onto the dog that it's just not true in that moment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not. It's okay. The next one, that it's fear.
No. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I think this is where you could say like maybe there's some fear in the sense of they're afraid to lose out on their resource.
Yeah, it might be an element.
Yeah, but they're not afraid of the thing coming. Because oftentimes if a dog is afraid, they're going to retreat and probably leave the resource, right? If it's a true fear response, that fear is going to override their desire to eat something or play with something or chew on something or maintain a space or whatever it is.
That's exactly it. Right? Exactly it. Okay, let's make sure we've covered them all here. We did the who's boss. Resource guarding only matters if the dog bites.
No. Well, I think this is where, in the moment, I can understand why people might not think it's an issue because the behaviors we're seeing are not necessarily concerning to us. Yeah. But if this behavior is emerging, I think it's indicative that there is conditions in place that are creating this feeling. And if those conditions aren't addressed, they can easily escalate.
They can easily escalate
to the point where they do eventually bite.
Right. So paying attention to those early warning signals that we discussed earlier and making sure that we're trying to identify what's going on, how we can manage the environment, can prevent a dog bite from happening. Nobody wants to wait until the dog has bitten, because that's never good for the people or the dog.
No.
Right? Yeah. Lastly, let's talk about that they'll grow out of it. My puppy's resource guarding and they're going to grow out of it.
Yeah. I think you are very optimistic if you feel like that's something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say that it will never happen, that you won't have a dog that will grow out of something. But that is leaving an awful lot to chance when the consequences of that not happening can be severe.
Plus there's learning, right? Like if it works for them, remember, if it works for a dog, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So if they're a puppy and they're doing it, they're rehearsing. They're practicing behavior to protect themselves, protect their resources, because it's part of survival. And if they're doing it and it works, they're going to keep doing it.
I think that's a big factor behind a lot of problem behaviors that you see. Is a dog is not just randomly or objectively doing something for no reason.
No.
If a dog is behaving a certain way, they feel that they are benefiting in some way from that behavior.
100%.
Right? Economy of behavior, which is a term that we talk about, basically says they're not going to waste their energy on something that they don't think brings value to them.
That's right.
Right? So if
Exactly.
they're behaving in this way, they believe it's achieving something. That
right.
means they're being reinforced for it, because the
right.
reinforcement comes from getting whatever they think they're gaining. Does that make sense? Right? So if we just ignore it and say, well, they'll grow out of this, you are kind of forgetting about the idea that, well, they are being reinforced by doing this behavior, and that reinforcement is going to increase the likelihood of them
100%.
repeating that behavior.
100%.
Right?
Yep, that's it, exactly. And then I think I'm going to sum this one up a little bit more by just, we talked a little bit about it, but let's talk about the forced trades and giving things up. This is something that happens with puppies. That's why I really, it's an important one. When you have a puppy, what is the thing that puppies do? They put everything in their mouth. What is the thing that we humans do when the puppies put things in their mouth?
Take it from them.
We take it from them.
Yeah.
Right? So to think that us grabbing and taking it out of their mouth, but then forcing something else on them is going to fix the resource guarding or stop resource guarding from starting in the first place, I think that's a myth.
Yeah.
I think that people will be very sad and upset when their puppy, who was okay, starts resource guarding later because we spent all our time grabbing them and taking the things that they had.
Yeah.
Even though we've given them something else. It's the act of always taking things from them without thinking about how that dog perceives what's going on and how they feel about that resource that they're taking. So
well, you're teaching them there's a competition for resources.
A competition,
and you're the
exactly.
competition.
100%.
And I know oftentimes, especially with puppies, is this comes from a good place. Right? We don't want them chewing on things that's going to harm them.
That's right.
I often have to remind clients, like, things are valuable to us because we put meaning into those objects.
That's right.
So a shoe to us is valuable because it's a shoe to us.
To a puppy, it's a chew
puppy,
toy.
it's a chew toy, right? They're just going around. And you got to think from a dog's perspective. If they're going around and sniffing and exploring and licking, and you have nothing to do with that, you're just letting it go on, and then they find something and you run over and take it.
That's right.
You are now kind of creating that behavior where every time I find something, it gets taken from me. Well, at some point, they're going to say, I don't want to lose this thing.
That's right.
And if you're not giving them any other option there, and all you're doing is taking it from them, you're presenting a situation for them to go, well, I want to keep this.
I want to keep it. I'm going to find a way. Oh, one thing we forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about ways that they resource guard is hiding things.
Yeah.
They take them and hide them, right? And that's a form of resource guarding because they're protecting their stuff. Yeah. So, and we don't want that. We don't want puppy grabbing stuff and running or swallowing it and eating it. So we don't want any of those things. Yeah. But those are the things as puppies that we tend to do is we tend to control everything. Yeah. Environmental management, super important with a puppy.
Oh, I think one thing also we forgot to mention, and I know we want to kind of wrap this up now, is the resource guarding of the owner from other people.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes this is because that owner is, viewed as like their main companion, their main source. There could be some genetic.
There can be some genetic components to it. Yes.
But you are the source of good. You have affection, of sometimes over affection, and you can create this like kind of unhealthy over attachment.
Yes.
Where now the dog views people coming and interacting with you as a threat.
A threat to their resource.
And
which
the
is
motivations behind that are the same thing as if you are a piece of food. Not to simplify it that way, but me coming over, if your dogs are there and I come over and I give you a hug, the dog can view that as me impeding upon their resource there, and then that's going to bring about that resource guarding.
It's the same as taking a bite of his burger.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's a good place to close this up for now. So the things to remember, key points, resource guarding is not something that is specific to one type of dog or another. It can be all dogs. It can be any dog. It can be mild. It can be extreme. It can be very intense with some dogs. It is shaped by their emotions and their genetics and their environment and all of the things that they've learned through the day and how safe they feel and how much they feel they have control over what's going on, what disturbances there are when they have a resource that they're trying to correct for, to protect their stuff. It's not dominance. It is not them being defiant or bad dogs. It's just a natural behavior that's part of survival. It's built into the repertoire of all living beings. And it's something that can be challenging when you're living with a dog in your house. So you're not the only one. If you have this happening in your home, it happens quite frequently. We see tons of cases on resource guarding. The reason that it is a problem in our homes, of course, is because dogs have teeth. So, and our skin's fragile, so it puts us at risk if dogs are going to bite us over resources. There are loads of things that can be done for it. If you're struggling with a dog that has resource guarding issues, please reach out. You can reach out to us. We do virtual consults with people if you're not in our area, or reach out to a behavior consultant in your area, somebody with lots of experience with resources. Please, 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 I strongly recommend that it is not somebody who uses punishment as a way to treat resource guarding. And the reason I say that is if it comes back out and emerges later after the suppression's removed, the dog can escalate faster and somebody can get hurt. So it is definitely a serious thing that you need to pay attention to if you have a dog that feels threatened around their resources. Veterinary behaviorist is also a good resource if you have a dog with serious resource guarding issues. So it's just a way for dogs to communicate to us. That's really what I want people to know about resource guarding. And we need to understand it and figure out what it needs to happen to make that dog feel safer so that they aren't resource guarding. And I think that's it. You got anything to add?
No, I think you nailed it on the head there.
All right. So that sums up for this week's episode of Friday Fireside Chats. Next week, we're going to talk about punishment.
Sure.
We're going to talk about punishment.
Yep. I mean, even in that last thing, you used a couple key terms there, suppression and those types of things where I think we should probably delve into it and understand.
Yeah, we've touched on it a couple of times in some of our episodes. So
when it's a risk, when it's not a risk, what is it? All those types of things.
Yeah. And like, when do you use it? When don't you use it? Because it is all part of learning. So we will go through all of that. And and then when do we use it as a unified canine? How do we use that type of thing in our training as well? So I think that's it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the future episodes. Pay attention to Monday is when we put out the first video, just a little short announcing what we're going to be talking about and giving you a little bit of a general overview on the topic. You can also like us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. We're across all the platforms. If you have any questions or anything that you would like to comment, please, we'd love to hear from you. If you have anything that you would like us to discuss in the future, again, please put it in the comments or shoot us an email, info@unifiedcanine.ca. We listen to all of it, and we will definitely do our best to cover whatever topic it is you would like us to discuss. Until next week, see you later.